Picture this. It's a Sunday evening. You're lying on your couch, maybe a cup of tea going cold on the table beside you, and your mind starts doing that thing it does. It starts building. You imagine the business you're going to launch, the book you're going to write, the language you'll finally learn, the version of yourself who wakes up at 6 in the morning and just handles things. You feel it, that electric little buzz in your chest. You think, okay, this time is different. This time I'm actually going to do it. And then Monday comes, and Tuesday, and somehow none of it happens. The idea fades like a dream you almost remember, and you're left sitting with this low-grade guilt, this quiet embarrassment, wondering what is actually wrong with you. Here's the thing, nothing is wrong with you, but something very specific is happening inside your brain, and once you understand it, it will change the way you see yourself completely. Let's talk about the psychology of people who dream big but do nothing, because there's far more going on beneath the surface than laziness, and I promise by the end of this, you're going to feel a lot less like a failure, and a lot more like someone who finally understands the game they've been unknowingly playing. So let's start with the dopamine problem. Your brain is a reward machine. It's constantly chasing hits of a neurochemical called dopamine, the molecule of motivation, anticipation, and pleasure. Most people think dopamine gets released when you achieve something, but neuroscientist Jacques Panksepp spent decades showing that dopamine actually fires most intensely in the anticipation of a reward, not the reward itself. The imagining, the planning, the hoping. What does that mean for you? It means that when you sit on that couch fantasizing about your future empire, your brain is already getting paid. It is literally experiencing a version of the reward without you having to do the work. You dream about writing the novel, and your brain goes, nice, got it, we're good. The screenplay doesn't need to get written because, chemically speaking, part of your brain thinks it already happened.
This is sometimes called mental simulation, and researchers at New York University found something fascinating about it. When people were asked to visualize a positive outcome, really sit in the feeling of having achieved something, they actually performed worse in the real world compared to people who visualized the process and the struggle. The dreamers, the pure outcome fantasizers, had lower energy, less motivation, because their nervous system had already cashed the check. And now think about our modern world for a second. Think about vision boards, manifestation culture. I'm speaking it into existence. All of it is tapping into this dopamine loop. It feels productive. It feels like momentum, but sometimes it's the most sophisticated form of avoidance ever invented. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting and a little bit uncomfortable. There's a concept in psychology called identity foreclosure. It's when a person builds their entire self-concept around a future version of themselves that doesn't exist yet. The writer who hasn't written anything, the entrepreneur who's been working on something for 3 years, the artist who talks about their vision so vividly that it feels real to them and everyone around them. When your identity becomes attached to a potential self rather than an actual self, taking action gets dangerous. Because if you try and it doesn't work, the dream dies. And if the dream dies, who are you? The gap between who you believe you are and what you've actually done becomes a kind of identity capital you can't afford to lose, so you protect it by never testing it. It sounds paradoxical, but consider this. The person who never submits the manuscript never gets rejected. The person who never launches the business never fails publicly. The person who keeps the dream as a dream gets to keep the dream. There's a perverse safety in potential, and your psyche knows it. Psychologist Carol Dweck spent years studying this dynamic in a slightly different frame, the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. People with a fixed mindset believe talent and ability are innate, not built. And here's the cruel irony. The people most likely to have enormous dreams are often the same people who believe greatness is something you have, not something you develop. They dream big precisely because they believe they're special, but they don't act precisely because acting would reveal whether or not that specialness is real. So the dream becomes a protective myth, and myths are never meant to be tested. There's also something I want to call the someday architecture, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. Someday when I have more time, someday when the kids are older, someday when I've saved more money, someday when I feel ready. Someday is not a date on the calendar. Someday is a psychological holding pen where good intentions go to wait indefinitely. And the cruelty of it is that it feels responsible. It feels mature. I'm just waiting for the right moment. But as the philosopher William James put it over a century ago, the greatest enemy of any plan is not opposition. It's the other plan. Specifically, the plan to start later. Now, here's the part I want you to really sit with. None of this means you're broken. None of this means you're fundamentally incapable of action. What it means is that your brain is doing exactly what evolution designed it to do: conserve energy, avoid failure, protect the self. Your brain is not your enemy. It's just not always your ally.
The people who manage to cross from dreaming into doing aren't necessarily more disciplined, more talented, or more fearless. Research on what psychologist Gabriele Oettingen calls mental contrasting suggests that the most effective mindset isn't pure optimism or pure pessimism. It's holding the vision and the obstacle simultaneously, wanting the outcome but being unflinchingly honest about what's standing between you and it. That tension, that productive discomfort, is actually what creates movement. Because here's the beautiful, slightly annoying truth. Clarity doesn't precede action. It follows it. Most people are waiting to feel certain, feel ready, feel inspired enough, and that feeling almost never comes on its own. But the moment you take one real step, even an ugly, imperfect, slightly embarrassing step, your brain gets different information. It stops treating the dream as a simulation and starts treating it as a real project. The dopamine shifts, the identity shifts. You stop being someone who wants to write and start being someone who writes, even badly, even slowly. One real action is worth 1,000 vivid imaginings. So if you've been sitting with a dream that never seems to move, I want you to stop diagnosing yourself as lazy. You're not lazy. You're probably just stuck in a loop that feels like momentum, but isn't. And the way out isn't willpower, it's understanding. It's catching yourself mid-daydream and asking, what is the smallest possible real thing I could do today? Not the whole plan, just one sentence, one email, one page, 1 minute. Because the version of you keep dreaming about, they didn't arrive through vision alone. They showed up imperfectly, inconsistently, doubt and all, and they kept going anyway. And honestly, that's a lot more interesting than the fantasy. If something in this resonated with you, I'd love to know which part hit hardest. Drop it in the comments below. And if you know someone who's been about to start something for a very long time, maybe send this their way. Not to call them out, but because understanding yourself is the first thing that actually moves you forward. See you in the next one.